Hi, Kirsty.
Good morning.
Kirsty, I've claimed birthing partner rights for this book. You know that already.
You do kind of deserve them, though. You were there for a lot of this.
The Goddess Path, 13 Steps to Becoming Your Most Intuitive, Authentic and Powerful Self. Obviously, I've been around myself when I've been writing books, but I've never really been around somebody else for as long as I was around you while you were writing this book for loads and loads of reasons. And you were nervous about it and you cared about it. And then we were delivered it earlier this week and I started to read it and I thought, what was she nervous about? This is like the most solid book. One of the most solid books we've ever been given to review. I promise you, honestly.
Thank you.
It is so solid. It's full of wonderful stuff. You know, it's distilled. It's not diluted. There's no flim flam. You just get to it straight away. And there are so many facets and aspects to the book. And I thought, this must, because I know how long this took you to write. I was around you in your writing windows. I was with you sometimes when you were writing it in various different locations. And it must have just fallen out of you because there's so much in it. And I'm thinking, did she write all that when we were together doing those other things? The answer is yes, she did. Congratulations, Kirsty.
Thank you.
It's awesome.
Thank you.
Part 2. Let's just go to part 2 and then we'll go back. We did this yesterday. It's a lot of fun. Part 2, the underworld. It's about just over halfway through the book. Kirsty says, we've now reached the midpoint and the doorway to the underworld. Before we enter, I want you to pause to check in whether you're ready to take this next part of the journey. For once you've met the dark goddess within, there's no going back.
There's no going
and I was
back.
like, I was reading, I was thinking, I have enough trouble sleeping. Anyway, by the way, it's not a fiction book. This is a non-fiction book, isn't it, Kirsty? All right, 13 steps to becoming your most intuitive, authentic and powerful self. Why 13? You speak to it at the start of the book, obviously because...
Well, we need to reclaim the power of the number 13. So the number 13 is a feminine number. It's the number of lunar cycles in a year. It's the number of menstrual cycles women have in a year. And at one time, the day Friday as well was really revered. It was when the goddess was worshipped. It's named after Freya, the Nordic goddess. Yep. It's the day Venus, the planet Venus. So our ancestors on Fridays would have worshipped the divine feminine. And especially Friday the 13th would have been seen as a day when we could just access those magical, creative life force energies of the feminine. And then when superstition took over, that got seen as a bad day for bad luck. And so I really wanted to begin by reclaiming the power of the
because it was
13.
hijacked, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
For no good reason?
Well, I think just to start to distance, I mean, when the church did come in and take over, they didn't really want the worship of goddesses because the worship came
it was anti-female propaganda then, really?
In a way. And it became man-made worship. So our ancestors would worship the divine in everything, in nature, in the trees, in the planets. And they wanted to bring it to a person that stood between you and the divine. So anything where we could go to ourselves and call on the goddess ourselves and access the goddess ourselves. And especially goddesses who worked with things like, you know, the magic and intuition and a knowing and our own powers. They were like, no, we can't have people that powerful. Yeah. We need to make this a superstitious day.
That's why I think it's such an important book. I mean, I know your books sell in other countries as well as the UK. I honestly think this book is going to be massive. It's not just a book for women.
No.
Tell us more about that.
Well, I think it's really important to mention at the start whenever I'm talking about this book, because this isn't kind of men against women. We've all got masculine energy in us in the same way we've all got feminine energy in us. But we live in a very masculine energy dominated world where we equate our worth to how much we're doing. We're always rushing around. It's about the doing, the achieving. We glorify being busy. We glorify to-do lists. And we've all lost that feminine energy within us, which is intuition, inner knowing, flow, trust, surrender, compassion, love, unity, oneness. So as we can all begin to access those feminine energies within us, the feminine then gets to begin to rise and we get to create a world where there is more kindness, more love, more magic and more self-knowing.
And it's, you know, the best things in life are free. We know that. And it speaks to all those things, doesn't it? It's the importance of things that are real.
Yes.
You know, love is real, truth is love. Is that the only real truth there is in the world anyway? Probably, you know.
Yeah.
But it also very quietly speaks in conflict with all the things we have over the years tried to manufacture into being important, but they're really not.
No.
And the thing about all these aspects, these 13 steps to becoming your most intuitive, authentic and powerful self, is that you wake up with them inside you.
Absolutely.
They're there, aren't they?
It's always there. And even the goddess work, that's what I say, like the goddesses will lend you their strength, but all they're doing is reawakening a strength that's already in you. These dormant forces within us that we've forgotten or denied, or as you say, we've sought validation in the outside world and approval in the outside world and looked to things outside of us to tell us who we are. Yeah. And it's always already been in there.
Yeah, and I love the way you sort of frame it as the goddesses lend you these powers, but it's a bit of a trick. It's a bit of sleight of hand, because the reason the goddesses lend you these powers, and Kirsty talks all about this in her book, is because you can't believe that you have these powers. So they say, well, we'll lend them to you. And then when you practice them and they become skills, the goddesses say, do you know what? Have them. Yeah. In fact, better than that, do you know what? They were already yours. Do you know what? Better than that, we never lent them to you. That's where we're going with this.
Exactly, yeah.
I love this sentence in the book. Here we go. This journey cannot be understood with the mind. And when I read something like that, I am straight in. I'm like, yeah, okay, you got me. You have me at this sentence. Yeah. Speak more to that if you don't mind.
Again, when we look at masculine energies, the masculine energies thought process, it's logic, it's getting things done. But the feminine can't be understood with that. Intuition can't be understood with the logical mind. And this is where we've lost the art of really knowing ourselves and our own inner power and magic, because we get told, but if it can't be put in a spreadsheet and it can't be explained and there can't be logic to it, it's not real. And these things are the most real things there are. Yeah. So when you try to grasp the feminine by, I want to understand you, she eludes you, because the feminine is feeling, emotion, movement. So as soon as you try to logic her, you've lost her already.
It's like the Tao, isn't it?
Yes.
You know, that is called the Tao cannot be the Tao. He who claims to know the Tao can never know the Tao.
Yep.
A goddess is a figure that represents the Shakti, or the divine feminine in her many aspects. You talk about the Shakti a lot.
Yeah. So Shakti is the divine feminine life force energy of the universe. It's what creates and weaves and flows. So everything is Shakti. So if we think of the masculine is kind of the holding energy. The Shakti is what animates everything and brings it to life.
So in chapter 1, and this is just in chapter 1. All right. So it's fantastic, and it's a real page turn. It really sort of sprints along. At the end of every chapter, every step, each step is a chapter, there's a reclamation ritual. And at the end of chapter 1, reclaim the goddess and the divine feminine, the goddess path, you reclaim the maiden, the mother, the warrioress, the lover, the healer, and there's like half a page on each of these after a chapter about the whole thing. The queen, the wise woman, the wild woman, the visionary. This is just chapter 1. The priestess, the medicine woman, but in the middle of it all is the creatrix. Yes. I'm like, ooh, yes. I like the creatrix. Is that a recognised phrase?
Yeah. It's a creatrix energy. It's what will bring your dreams and hopes and visions to life. And so all those feminine archetypes are, again, they're facets of us that we lose or forget. So you can call upon when you've got a project to do, call upon your creatrix energy, and she'll just weave herself through you and bring it to life through you. It's magic.
Did you obviously you accessed all these goddesses whilst you were writing the book?
Yeah.
Because it seems to be, publishers say, oh, you've got a great voice. That's what when I was reading this, it was the voice that came screaming through. I thought, this is such a powerful voice. I mean, you're a powerful lady anyway. But I thought, was this what you were packing when we were like together? Yeah. You had the laptop out? And were these words and these thoughts and these phrases and these ideas, were they just coming via you then? How was it for you when you were writing, sitting next to me?
It was a really interesting and beautiful process writing this book, because it's very personal to me. I think I've lived in this way for 20 years. Right. So now it's making this public. And it was a really interesting process, because I write in the start of the book, these aren't my words, they're her words, they're your words, they're our words. So in the moments I tried to logic it and sit at the laptop and bang away and grasp the words, they would elude me.
Yeah.
And I'd sit there and I'd go, but you're too busy to go out for a walk. You're too busy to step away. You're too busy to do this, Kirsty, you've got to do this. But the moment I would then go outside in nature, my phone is filled with voice notes where all of a sudden the words would come in and I'd have to get my phone out and capture them being spoken, because I couldn't logic this book. I had to let it flow through me and give myself the space to do that.
It feels like one of those books, and I know it isn't, but it feels like one of those books that has been super, super overwritten, like 900,000 pages, and then like the best editor in the world has crunched it down, because every sentence is packed with meaning and purpose. There's no fat here at all, but that's not what happened. It just landed lean.
It landed. We swapped about a little bit here and there. And also it wasn't done in a linear way. So it wasn't, my publishers, bless them, kept saying, can we see a chapter? And I was like, no, because it doesn't write like that. I don't write chapter 1, 2, 3. I just write bits of everything that come everywhere, and then they all come into where they're meant to be.
It's fine if you're the client or you're the author, but obviously they hear that from a lot of authors, and it's just a big fat lie because you haven't written a word. But it genuinely was the case as far as you were concerned. Reclaim Your Self-Worth is a golden chapter. They're all fantastic. Tell us about Durga. You got this lovely section, what would Durga do?
Yes. So Durga is one of the first goddesses I started to work with when I lived in India for a year, and I would go to a lot of Durga temples. And Durga is almost like this stage mother energy where she knows exactly what you're capable of, exactly what you can do, exactly who you can be. And she sort of pushes you out there a tiny bit before you're ready. So I taught a retreat in France many, many years ago, a women's retreat. And we really wanted to just channel that goddess archetypal energy of standing in our worth and our truth and our power. So I told them the story of Durga. So the whole week then, whenever we had to face anything or do anything, we go, what would Durga do?
Yes, great.
And even that one sentence, it was. But even now I do it in my life that like I'm about to do something, I'm nervous, and I go, but what would Durga do? And I feel this Durga energy, she's there, and she's like, this is what I would do.
It's like having your own cinematic universe, isn't it?
Yes.
Your own Marvel universe of goddesses.
Yes.
But they're real, and you can call upon them.
You can call upon them.
Yeah. And you could call upon them, but they are you and you are them.
Absolutely.
Anyway. Chapter 3, Reclaim Your Boundaries. Boundaries are one of the greatest acts of self-love. Great chapter again. And you speak here immediately to the fact that boundaries aren't there to keep people out. They're there to hold yourself together.
Absolutely. And in doing so, they actually keep people in, because I tell again a few personal stories in this book, but I used to say yes to everything. And when I really dug into it, it's because I had this really deep down fear that if I said no, people wouldn't like me and they wouldn't ask me again. So I would say yes to everything, knowing I didn't really want to do it. So then there's the underlying resentment. Then I'd end up letting people down. And then that would create the very thing I wanted to avoid in the first place. Yeah. So it's a really huge realization for me of actually boundaries make people feel safe around you. People know where they are with you. They know what's okay and what's not. Yeah. They know what you're going to give and what you're not. It helps everyone just feel really safe. Yeah,
and they have an issue with it, and it's uncomfortable for them at first. But then when the water's calm, they are as relieved as you are.
Absolutely.
And often they then take up the practice themselves. I mean, they'd never say that to you. They'd never admit it. But I've seen that happen. You know, what you've just said on the air out loud. Here we go on page 57. It's time for a deep, dark confession from me, says Kirsty in her book. But I feel we know each other well enough now for that already. I used to say yes to so many invites, knowing full well that I didn't want to and wouldn't go, and would make an excuse nearer the time on the day. Sorry to anyone I did this to. So there's a bit of a confession in there as well, a bit of atonement, isn't there? Yeah. The more I got to know myself, the ickier this felt, as it was so out of alignment with who I wanted to be and how I wanted to show up in full authenticity. I'd feel terrible cancelling and would sometimes not let people know at all and just not show up, full stop. Horrible behaviour, Kirsty. You say of yourself. I love it. That made me laugh out loud. You're so honest.
That's
How did it feel when you were writing that?
It felt like I wanted to delete it, and then I kept it in, and then even the editor, when we went through the process, they were like, is it staying? And I was like, I can't, because I want to share all of that, because I think it helps people. And again, I say in there, the only people who'll have a problem with your boundaries are the ones who benefit from overstepping them all the time. So,
and they quickly disappear. The ones you fear most disappear the first, because they need to go onto pastures greener, or prey that's more vulnerable and fragile.
Absolutely.
Because if you put up a little bit of a a show of strength, just a little bit, they are so opportunistic, they'll just run a mile.
Yeah.
You don't have to build these massive fortresses that you think you have to.
No, just a little.
You really don't. Chapter 4, reclaim the witch within.
Yes.
Chapter 6, reclaim your energy. I loved this chapter because you talk about Shakti in chapter 1, but then this is a chapter I thought I've got to go back. I'm going to go back tonight and read this properly. You talk about chakras, you talk about Shakti. As you reclaim and refine your energy, you're able to access your intuition, inner wisdom and knowing, and your inner goddess so much more easily. If you can possibly be more truthful to yourself, that releases all the super fuel anyway.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Part 2, the underworld.
Yes.
This is the bit that scared me.
Oh, that's why I put a little warning there. A lot of people are afraid of the dark goddess energy, but the dark goddess, when you start to work with those dark goddess energies, that's when you're really going to come face to face with your sabotages, where you get in your own way, where you're lying to yourself, and you're going to really access your power.
Yeah. I mean, you do say here, before we enter, I want you to pause to check in whether you're ready to take this next part of the journey. What was your first experience with the dark goddess? How come you accessed her within you? Did you get any help? Did you have a mentor? Did you have a teacher?
Not really. I mean, I've worked with a lot of teachers over many, many years. A lot of the time in India I spent working with kind of dark goddess energies.
Let's speak to that year in India you experienced. Why did you go? What did you do there? What kind of things did you learn?
I went to do my yoga teacher training initially because I wanted to go to where yoga came from. I wanted to go and breathe and sweat and bleed and live yoga for a year. But while you're there, you can't help but fall into, and I lived with a lot of Indian families while I was out there because I wanted to, again, really immerse myself in what was going on. And so gradually, bit by bit, the Indian mothers will take care of you. They take you under their wing. So you end up starting to go to puja with them and temples with them, and they dress me up in beautiful saris and take me to all these like Durga temples and everything. It was just such a beautiful experience of being able to then witness and feel the goddess energies firsthand and how the goddesses are worshipped in this way and really revered. So it was such a magical introduction to having that truly embodied experience of what it felt like to be in the presence of the feminine.
And if you could describe the dark goddess in other terms, a definition of the dark goddess, what kind of things are we talking about there?
The dark goddess she's your truth, she's your authenticity, she's everything you've been afraid to look at.
So she's the opposite of what she sounds like.
Yes, the dark goddess is powerful magic. So it might sound dark as in it's dark, it's a negative thing, but it's powerful. She's called the dark goddess because she helps us to reclaim those parts of ourselves we've hidden in the dark, those parts of ourselves we've hidden in the shadows.
So you shine some light on those.
Exactly.
And then when you shine a light on anything, it's usually nowhere near as fearsome than you. It's all in the mind. It's a lot of it's in the mind.
Because as we talk about the shadow work chapter in there, it's our shadows that it's that little voice that taps you on the shoulder and says, "Oh, are you sure you can do that? Are you sure you're good enough?" Those shadows will hold you back.
Why is that there? What is that voice about? Why does nature? Because it's all nature. Why does nature give us that? It's not poking the bear. It's the opposite, isn't it? It's unnerving us. It's constantly the chimp. It's the chimp, isn't it? Why do you think that exists?
I think it holds a beautiful way of allowing us to then grow, because again, I talk a lot in the book about if things come easy, we don't appreciate them.
That easy come, easy go. That's true, isn't it?
It really is. Whereas if you've had to work through something and go through some darkness and struggle, and so if you look at anything in nature, when a bud has to come out and break out, it doesn't just pop out, it has to break out of that bud. An acorn break out of the shell.
Or a chick.
Anything under the ground has to break out of the hard ground.
Yeah.
But in that, I remember in Sacred Seasons I wrote about daffodils, because often you see daffodils and they've got that little brown kind of little skin bit on them.
Sort of membrane.
Yeah, but that's over the daffodil to protect it so it can push out of the hard, cold earth. And then when it's
like the spatial re-entering.
Yep, it's grown, it releases that bit, doesn't need it. So when we meet the dark goddess and we go through our doubts and our fears, they help us then to be able to own ourselves and know ourselves and trust ourselves. So things like this, people don't believe it, but things like this aren't naturally comfortable for me. I'm not naturally comfortable on radio, TV. I have to really push for it. I feel almost physically sick before coming on. But when I do this, it makes me be like, but Kirsty, you can do it. And I talk a lot in the book about praising yourself. So after things like this, and I remember you talked to me about this years ago, about having that moment of afterwards saying, well done, you did it. And that stays with me. So every time I get nervous, there's a bit of me that goes, but you can do it.
Yeah.
You know you can do it.
Yeah.
So if I hadn't have gone through that, there wouldn't have been any learning, any growth, any evolution, any transformation. So it's there to help us to overcome those voices, and that's when we really transform in life.
It's funny you should say what you just said, because for the first time, I've never thought this before, but I think, because you just said then, I remember you saying to me years ago, and obviously that I just heard that out loud, and now you've made me realise we've known each other for years.
Yeah.
But I feel like we've only just met. And I think, and I've only just thought this, I think people that are good for you, you always feel like that about. And people that aren't, it does feel like you've known them for as long as you've known them.
Yeah.
I feel like you just walked in here just now, and I just feel like, oh, Kirsty, almost, hi, it's nice to meet you.
Yeah.
But I've known you for ages.
Exactly.
And really well
Exactly.
now. I know you
Yeah.
really well. But it's like I've only just met you. Sorry, I'm hogging the conversation again. I can't help it. Over to you two. Rachel, you go first.
I loved one of the first parts of the book. Just for anybody who's new to all of this and they're not really sure where to begin or how to get into it. And you talked about getting to know the different goddesses and sort of welcoming them in for a day. And you talked about sort of embodying like the maiden and the play form and just spending a day where you choose to see the good in everybody, and you choose to compliment everybody. And that's just a really simple thing that people could decide to do right now. And just, what's the power of that?
In embodying the feminine archetypes, it helps us to bring through those parts of ourselves that we may be lost. So the maiden energy I adore, because many of us, when life happens and life starts lifing, we forget to play, we forget to have fun, we forget to see the good in everything because we're constantly bombarded with how awful and scary the world is and how we've got to watch out for everybody. And especially, I think, more so for women, we do get pitted against each other a lot in the media and in beauty standards and in all of these different things. So we can get very cynical, I think. So when we can then begin to embody these feminine archetypes like the maiden, we can call on our inner maiden to remind us that life can be fun, it can be playful, it doesn't have to be so serious all the time. So if I said to you, take a day off tomorrow and just go and have fun, you'd be like, well, I've got things to do.
Yeah.
But if I said to you, call on your inner maiden energy, bring that inner maiden energy and take her, you're more likely to go, okay, I'm going to try this. So I feel like feminine archetypes just bring through another way to, again, access. We've all got that inner maiden, but we put her to sleep at a certain age and say, oh no, I don't have time for play anymore, off you go. And it just helps us, the mother archetype helps us to care for ourselves, to love ourselves. Our warrioress archetype helps us when we've got to go in somewhere and really stand up for ourselves. So it's another way to just access how to work with all facets of self.
Yeah, because kids don't want to, put an end time on playing. They'll play forever. Yeah. Whereas we have to build up to playing when we grow up. You go, oh, yeah, okay, I'll play with you for half an hour. And you have to build up to it and try and get out of it. And then you play for half an hour and you're looking at the clock. Kids just want to play forever, don't they? They'll miss their dinner. They'll miss bedtime. They'll just, let's play. And why should we be any different? We just got to out the habit energy of it.
That's it. Exactly.
And also, talking about being playful, the most serious thing that will happen to most of us is either we'll get really ill or somebody that we really love gets really ill. How do people, professional carers, what is one of their main strategies? It's laughing, isn't it? It's joking with people. It's playing, even in the darkest situations on, the most serious of wards. There'll be a playful aspect to the care around because it works.
It does.
Touch and humour. Yeah. It really works. That's all.
I mentioned earlier that the book felt like you were holding our hand through part one, through the descent, reclaiming the goddess and the divine feminine, holding our hand very tightly in the underworld, meet the dark goddess. And then you were still holding our hand, thank goodness, during the ascent. I think sort of towards the end, reclaim you start to let go of our hand. But I very much needed you to hold my hand during reclaim your truth, reclaim your truth. So could you hold everybody's hand metaphorically now and just because I think some people find that quite intimidating. Reclaim. So what is my truth? What is everybody's truth?
What does that mean? Tell us more about that.
I think the Reclaim Your Truth chapter was such a beautiful chapter for me to write, because that's what I really want all of us to be able to do, is to reclaim a semblance of knowing our own truth. Because especially when we work in more of the spiritual realms, none of us know the exact answer until we go back there, if you believe that there is indeed a there. And once again, we're constantly bombarded with what to believe and what to think and what to know. And we do seek validation and approval and everything outside of ourselves. But when you can start to bring that back to you, of, well, what do I believe? What's my truth? What do I want to stand for? Who do I want to be in the world? And I know I start that chapter with, again, some sticky moments of reclaiming your sabotages, because in all truth, very often the only person that gets in our way is us. So that chapter, we've been in the underworld, we've looked at our shadows. It's about them really taking that long, hard look at ourselves and saying, well, where do you get in your own way? Where do you repeat the same patterns and cycles over again? And how can we now start to break that? And then speaking your truth, it gets thrown around a lot, but what does that actually mean? But speaking your truth is being in such an amount of knowing and embodiment and trust within yourself that you're able then to use your voice. You trust what you've got to say. You trust your own knowing. You trust what you stand for. You trust how you want to move through the world. And so it's just a real moment of then being able to decide of, I don't actually need the rest of the world to tell me what to believe or who to be or how to act. I get to decide that by beginning to reclaim what my truth is.
Love it. And you can become speechless. You became speechless in the back of a taxi once, because
I
if
did.
you are in touch with yourself, you become speechless because your body won't allow you to say things that you don't mean anymore.
Yeah.
And it's the opposite of anxiety. That's actual truth telling, isn't it?
It is. And that's what working with the feminine does. The feminine is embodiment. It helps us to access that deep body wisdom, because our body, the whole time we're running around saying, yeah, I'm fine. Our body knows when we're not. Our body knows when we're not in our truth. Our body knows when we're lying. And that's where the feminine energy lives. So when we can come into our body wisdom and make decisions from body wisdom, because our logic mind will have you yes, no, left, right, this, that, there. It'll tie you in circles. It'll answer the same problems. It'll create, when you drop into here, that voice of your inner knowing will just be a simple yes, no, go, stay. But it takes us a while to trust this because we've been told it's not right. And that's reclaiming truth. It's being like, I have the answers within me. I know what's best for me. And I can go in here and access this well of wisdom anytime I want to.
Yeah, because the feeling body is more powerful than the thinking mind, as long as you can feel the feeling body.
Yes.
And the reason we get constricted in the throat and the reason we get really tight shoulders is because that's the bridge of conflict, isn't it? It should be the golden bridge of harmony. Mm-hmm. And that's what yoga's about, isn't it? But that's why you get tight all up here. And then you can't breathe, and then you can only breathe through in your chest, and that's completely unhelpful. As a qualified and super yogi, right? And as a master meditator, because I've seen you do it and I've meditated with you and you're awesome at it, as a brilliant author, as a sensory instrument for the rest of us to benefit from in the universe, all that added together doesn't mean you still don't get frazzled, does it?
No, my God, no.
And because people are thinking, she's got it sus, and you definitely have got it sus, but you still get frazzled.
Absolutely.
So if you get frazzled, what I hope is for the rest of us, right? But when you do get frazzled, is there a sort of go-to switch that you can flick going, I need to flick this switch now, and is it always the same switch, and does it always turn the same light on, which leads you to the rest of everywhere you need to go?
Yes and no. I've got a lot better now at not getting to the stage where I get completely frazzled.
So you can smell it.
So yeah. So even running up to knowing this book was coming out and I was going on tour and coming on here and doing all these things, I'd started to put non-negotiable daily practices in place. Right. Because we often think that, and I joke about this a lot, but we kind of want to Amazon Prime our whole lives now. We want to do one meditation and we're fixed, and we want to do one yoga class and we're flexible, and we want to do one of this. And in truth, it's the small little daily things you do that matters. So rather than me crashing, burning, taking one whole day to recover, I'm better to take 10 minutes every day for 2 weeks in the run up to something. So I've just had non-negotiable daily devotional time. And one of my favourite things to do, honestly, and I write about this in the book, I lay down on the floor and I just let myself surrender to the goddess and be held. I'm just like, hold me. And I try to just feel, where am I holding the tension in my body? Where am I trying to grip, manipulate, micromanage? And can I now just sink into surrender and let go, trusting and being guided and supported?
It's so good, isn't it?
So
You're so good.
lay on the floor.
You are so good at this. The book is amazing. You're amazing. Oprah, get your show back on the telly for 1 week only so you can have Kirsty on the show.
Yes!
This is awesome. Awesome. We get so many texts and WhatsApp, so we're out of time, Kirsty. You're the best.
Oh,
you're the best. You're the best. You're the best.
Thank you.
Why you were ever worried about this work, I'll never know. Because it was clearly always within you, and now it's out there for the rest of us to enjoy. From the Sunday Times best-selling author Kirsty Gallagher, The Goddess Path, 13 Steps to Becoming Your Most Intuitive, Authentic and Powerful Self. It is as good as these kind of books get. Thank you, Kirsty.
Thank you.
Virgin Radio.